Brittany. Tracy, would you be willing to say the opening prayer for us, please? Followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Audrey.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this opportunity to meet together as members of the Planning Commission and representing the citizens of Highland. We're grateful for this opportunity to serve, grateful for this wonderful community that we live in and the good people who live here. We're grateful for those who lead us and selflessly give their time. We ask that we bless tonight that we will consider matters in a thoughtful way and with the best interests of all our citizens in mind. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first item would be any unscheduled public appearances. Okay, going once, going twice. Thank you very much. We'll close now for consent items 2A. Would anybody like to make a motion or make comments about the meeting minutes from the 28th of October?
Motion to approve the minutes of October 28, 2025.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have
Yes.
wonderful. Deborah, go ahead. Yes? Wes?
Yes.
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 Okay, dispatched in short order. The first item would be pre-con meetings and requirements. This is a legislative item. Rob, if you could breeze through this with alacrity, we would be most pleased.
I will do my best. In short, we hold pre-construction meetings after approval of site plans and subdivisions. There's some requirements that we walk through. It just isn't spelled out in our code. So we haven't had a developer say, you can't make us do this, but I would like to not have that fight. So now we're just going to set up the clear process of once you get your approvals of subdivisions or site plans, here's the next step, and then you can start your building. So it's adding a new section into the city's code that just kind of generally applies throughout the code. It requires a pre-construction meeting after the site plan subdivision approval before work. They bring paper copies in. We stamp them as the approved for construction. They have to have those copies on site, so we know they're actually building to what the approved plans are. They're supposed to bring their engineer, their contractor, so they coordinate with it's a meeting held with the developer, contractor, engineer, and public works, who are going to be the guys that are going to go inspect everything. So it lets them get to know each other a little bit. They can walk through, here's how you schedule inspections. Here are some things to be aware of building in Highland City to try to avoid some common problems they see. And then after the pre-construction meeting or at the pre-construction meeting, we ask them to pay their construction and SWIP inspection fees. So they pay for us to go and inspect their improvements, and they pay for our stormwater guy to make sure they're complying with SWIP, stormwater pollution prevention is what that stands for. Sorry, it's just we always just say SWIP, and I forget what it actually means. It means you can't run mud into the streets, you can't put stuff into our storm drains, so we inspect for that as well. They will sometimes provide assurances and assurance estimates. We'll talk a lot more about that in the next one. There's a public improvement agreement where they just say, we'll build to the plans that we've approved, and then they'll also, before disturbing land, get their SWIP, their UPD's permit. So those are all the requirements. We're just trying to spell them out in code. It's ever since we've been developing, we've been doing these things. It's just making sure there's no question about it. So that's the end of my presentation. We had no comments received from the public after publishing notice, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. This is a public hearing as well.
Okay, super. Why don't we open this for public hearing? Please don't all rush to the podium at once. Okay, I think we can conclude the public hearing. And now, commissioners, does anybody have any comments? I mean, my summary of this would be, it's really just writing down something we've been doing, but it's just never been written down before.
Exactly.
Okay, any questions?
Rob, are these pre-construction meetings the one that sometimes we come to as kind of like the approval body? Is that something different?
That's something different. That's the DAB, the Development Administration Board. Though at a couple of our minor subdivisions, we've held a pre-construction meeting immediately afterward because they were really trying to get done. So you might have seen, I think at the last two were minor, there were lot splits.
Yeah.
And basically they had all their stuff and all the public works guys marched in at the end because they were trying to go get their road cuts done before our asphalt paving deadline.
That's right,
So
yeah.
we aren't part of that. In fact, my favorite part is we get to the site plan or subdivision approval, then I get to hand it off to Public Works and say, it's your job now.
I think you did a good job. Thank you.
Yes, I think I like
Makes
it
sense.
because, oh, go ahead, sorry. I like it because it just saves questions and also presents it so they can look at it and see, okay, I have to do this, or whatever. So I move, if no one's, is everybody ready? I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed amendment related to pre-construction requirements.
I seconded.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Move
Yes.
right along.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. You know, they say to make something eternal, there's no need to make it everlasting. We're on a good roll here. Rob, would you like to go ahead with assurance, both
Be happy to.
performance and warranty?
Yes. So we mentioned this a little bit earlier, and we've talked about this on various occasions at the Planning Commission. We require certain assurances in connection with development. Much of it's regulated by state law, but there's some areas that we need to address. And we wanted to add some clarification just to avoid some conflicts and make sure that the developers can get to developing faster. I'm just going to start with an example. So we have the Highland Acres subdivision. It's not a real subdivision. They're doing, your standard improvements. They've got road, utilities, some public landscaping. We'll say the total is $1 million. That's the cost of all of those public improvements. They have their final plat and development plans approved. They've gone to Planning Commission. They've gone to the DAB. They're ready to build. They've held their pre-con. The question comes up, the developer wants to sell lots. That's their whole goal. We want to not let them sell lots because we want to make sure the public improvements get done. And so there's that little bit of a stalemate. The assurances are how we resolve that. So there's kind of two and a half options for developers. First one is they build everything first. So they go through, they install that $1 million of landscaping and utilities and roads. We go and inspect it, we accept it, and then we say, great, you are done. You provide us a warranty that's 10%, so $100,000, and that just means that for at least 1 year after we've accepted it, it'll stay in good condition. And then after that point, we will record the plat, and they can then sell their lots. The land is then subdivided. However, some developers can't afford, it's very expensive to put that in, so they want to be selling lots while putting in the improvements, so they get revenue in to offset the improvement costs. So this is the more common approach. We call it, we use the term bonding often for this. There's a type of assurance that's called a surety bond that we don't accept, but everyone just generally calls this bonding. So if I say we take a bond, just know I'm referring to the general sense of they are giving some kind of monetary assurance to guarantee things. So in this scenario, rather than them building that $1 million, they say, I promise I will install all of that in the future, and here is money to guarantee it. So they will give 1.1, in our example, 1.1 million to the city. It'll either be cash or a letter of credit. That is 100% of the cost of all of the improvements, plus a 10% cost for administration. So once we get that performance guarantee, we then record the plat, they can sell the lots, and then they start working on the public improvements. If they ever fail, if they just abandon a project and walk away, the city can then use that money to complete the improvements. We've never had to do that. It's not a fun process. The city is not as good at developing as developers are. It's get used as leverage to say, developer, we're still holding your money, go finish the thing so we can give this back to you. Once the developer does finish all their improvements, we inspect, we accept. If it's all good, we hand them the money back, say you're fine, and then at that point we'll take the warranty, that same 10%, so $100,000. So from date of completion, they have 1 year that stays in good condition, and then they get all their money back and they're done.
So you're saying that usually a developer doesn't have that sometimes a developer doesn't have that kind of money to do it up front. And so you're saying then they give the city this assurance or letter of credit, but if they don't have the money to begin with, how are they going to give that to us?
So the cash The letter of credit option, you can have a relationship with a financial institution. Well, they will charge a developer a certain amount of money, but not the full amount, to issue a letter of credit based on their history with that financial institution. And sometimes it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of timing.
Yeah, they want to sell sooner.
They want to sell now. Say they got their plat approved end of fall. They can't build a road until spring. But they don't want to just sit on bare ground for, all of winter. So let's just get the plat done. We can start marketing, selling these things, and then as soon as spring hits, we're going to build everything as quickly as possible.
And what is our recourse if they don't?
That money, that 1.1 million becomes the
We
city's.
can go self-performing.
And that money will be there?
Yes.
That the bank will assure that it's there?
It's
So
the money plus 10%.
It's the money plus 10% because it always costs us more to
Yeah.
do something, so that's what the 10% covers. And the money is either literally a cash deposit, so it's either a cash deposit with us or another bank, or it's a letter of credit, which is the next best thing to cash, which is literally, it's a 1 or 2 page letter that says, from some financial institution that says, we guarantee we have this amount of money. If you present this to us and certify that they failed to complete things, we will hand you this money within 30 days. It's, again, we've never had to do it. We don't want to do it. It costs everyone a lot of time and effort. It's just a recourse.
So this is pretty common,
Very common.
and you can't get a public report unless you have either put the roads in or have the assurance. And it is, you want to sell something early so you get the stress off of you that you're going to sell. But the question I have, if it's $10 million and I put up 10 plus 10% million, $11 million, and I put in 3 million of the improvements, am I able to draw down that cash?
What a great segue.
Next topic. Next topic.
So, 2 ways of drawing down. One is, if you bond it up front under option 2, we do allow partial releases. So we reduce the amount we're holding based on how much of the work is completed. Because we don't need to hold 100% if they've done, 75% of the work. We hold a certain amount. The other option is, say they got approved in summer, they started doing all their improvements. They got utilities in, but they didn't get to the asphalt in time, so they can't build the road yet. So we say, okay, you've got about half your improvements done. And they say, can we now sell our lots? We can do a bond for half of the improvements. So if they did half the improvements, we'll take
even
money
after
for
you
the
start,
other
okay.
half. So in this case, under our example, it would be $600,000. So it'd be 100% of the costs of all remaining improvements, which in this case would be $500,000, plus 10% of the total cost again. In this case, they've done some of it, we've inspected and accepted it, we're taking a bond for the rest of it, and then they sell their lots. This is, I think, probably the most common thing we have happen in Highland, is people will start doing a lot of work, often they'll get their utilities in, say, great, we now know these lots can be served, we're gonna work on our roads. Usually it's a timing thing, the weather didn't permit it. So they say, let's record and sell lots, and we'll get the road done later. So in this case, the problem we have had with this, though, recently with staff is it's pretty easy to get an estimate from the developer of all of their costs. It's harder to get a new estimate of what is left. Often they'll just kind of say, yeah, we did half of it, and then leave it to us to figure out what that means. And so a lot of these code changes are just, we want to clarify this process so they know what to give us, so we can tell them how much to give us, and they can go record. So this is clarifying, this is the main point of this amendment, is clarifying the information that they have to submit to us. So how they estimate costs is one of 2 ways, either an engineer's estimate, a civil engineer who looks at it and they give an engineer's estimate of costs, or they have their contractor who's actually doing it give us their bid. We're now clarifying they have to break down those estimates and costs by infrastructure improvement category, materials, quantities, and costs. So they'll give us one that says, say, for example, culinary water. And it'll have all of their facilities, the things related to culinary water. So it'll be, 8-inch ductile iron pipe, 1,000 linear feet, $40 per linear foot. So our total cost for that is $40,000. So they'll break it down by every improvement and how much is required for their development. And so we're asking for one estimate or bid for everything. And then if they do some of the work, either give us a new estimate or bid or have their engineer or contractor essentially restamp it saying, we've done all this, this is what we're saying is left to do. And we're hoping that by putting this kind of requirement out there, it'll be clear so they can work and then know exactly how to get into bonding and recording.
And is staff able to disagree with the total?
Yes, we don't ask for mathematical precision. We're not out there double checking every number, but our engineers also kind of know what the cost. If they say we can do, 1,000 linear feet of ductile iron pipe for about $100, we'll say, no, you can't, or go buy us a lot of that because we would love to know what deal you found.
Okay.
So we can reject it, and we have done it where it's like, you said you have no manholes, we know you have 7. Go add that to your bid and get it back to us.
Okay.
But if they say, we know it's between $20 and $50, and they show something that's like 35, great, we're not going to question that. And then the rest of the red ink you saw throughout that was just a lot of cleanup, because as I was going through it, I realized we said the same thing like 3 or 4 times in different ways. So I was trying to scrap out as much redundant language and just have one general section for here's the type and amount of bond, here's how you do it, and then here's specific things for subdivisions and contractors, and kind of clean that up. I also added that these assurances can be used to clear liens and encumbrances. So you can have a contractor's or mechanic's lien on property if they didn't pay their sub for work they did. So we can use those assurances if we have to clear those liens off so the city can take the public property free and clear. And they also referenced the pre-construction meeting, so that's part of this. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, we posted notice, no comments, and we recommend a public hearing and approval.
Okay, let's open it up for public hearing first. And if there are no takers, we'll conclude the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I just had one. So on the subcontractor thing, so if the developer does not pay their subcontractors, what happened?
So the subs, when you do a construction project, you can put a lien on saying that basically if I don't get paid for my work, I can claim this property.
Right.
That's why we would, if they haven't recorded, the city doesn't own anything and doesn't cause us any heartache because we won't take ownership of it until they actually do all the work and clear it off. If they have recorded the plat, we own the street, they've dedicated it to us, they've also given us money, so if they don't clear the lien off, we'll say, fine, we will clear it off ourselves, and it's going to still cost the developer. I haven't really had that happen in the developer, because developers usually have a general contractor who's required to have a payment bond that guarantees payment to their subs. We've had a few times where we've had to bring in a general and a sub, and for city projects where we've had to hand a check to the general and watch them hand a check to the sub, but that's pretty rare.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Rob, what happens if this 1 million ends up being drastically over or under? Is there, I guess, how does that affect this, or does it?
Not really. I mean, if it's drastically over, then the developer had a bad estimate or bid and we have excess money.
Mm-hmm.
If it's drastically under, hopefully our engineers catch it, because we do have our engineers review all of those, so there's nothing drastically off. I will say, if we ever had to collect one of these, it's more than likely we won't be able to finish out all the improvements. It always costs the city more to do things than developers. But I've had to do it like 2 or 3 times in my career, and we've always had enough money to get the life safety things done. Like, we could finish the road, we could finish the utilities, even if we couldn't get the street lights installed or all the conduits for electrical in. We could make it so it was livable for some of it. And so we've never had a problem where we haven't had enough to, at the very least, do that. And I've never had that problem with Highland at all.
Any other comments? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
Okay. I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed amendments related to development assurances.
I second the motion.
Okay, seconded by Tracy.
Yeah.
Should we have roll call?
Yes, yes.
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 One last question.
Oh, I think,
Sorry about that.
no problem.
So, so you gave us 3 scenarios there, so the developer can pick which scenario. We're not picking tonight which one we want to do. That's open for them to decide.
They have the option, whatever works best for their
Okay.
development.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Sherry, if I may, just to comment, even though we've all agreed to this, there are tons of other scenarios where like Rob alluded to, the developer skips town or there's some lawsuit or disaster. But I think this covers all bases from at least a citizen's point of view. All right, now let's move on to just discussion items.
If I may.
Go ahead, you may.
Just giving you a heads up, I've calendared out my entire year of code changes I want to bring to you. So I wanted to outline those to give you a heads up. And then also, we did adopt a general plan, and I want to get your feedback on what are your goals for the year so that we can incorporate those as we begin preparing agendas and getting those out to you. So the things I'm planning on bringing to the commission, these are some things that either the commission directed, council directed, or staff looked at it and thought there were some problems. So these are our home occupation and ordinance is just kind of out of date. I just want to do some cleanup there. Our sign code is very inconsistent between all of our zones, and it's restricting some businesses more than I think it really should be, unfairly. Parking standards, every zone is a little bit different, and we don't really address like drive-throughs versus restaurants, which we saw with the Mobetas. So I'd like to clarify that so we have some better language there and make it kind of standard throughout the city. I talked about this a while ago, but a consolidated land use table, so we don't have 8 zones with slightly different uses in all of them. We can say, here's every use in the city, and here's the zone, so everyone can find it much easier.
It would be a map format?
It would just be a table, but we'd be able to say, each zone, CR zone gets this, the PO zone gets this, and everyone can see at a glance what is allowed and what's not. And we don't have weird language like, one place allows doctors, the other one says medical, and are those the same things? It's like, yes. So we'll clean up some of those things. The other thing I'd like to do is bring up a site plan process. Every one of our commercial zones has a different site plan process. I'd rather make it like subdivisions where we have a subdivision process and it just applies to all subdivisions in the city. So I'd like to do that for site plans as well. Some minor things, site triangles. We just have 3 different standards I found in the code. There will be a bunch of new state laws, and I have a section. We're going to have legislative updates at the end of these, just so we try to keep you abreast of the pending fun that we'll get from the state legislature this legislative session. And then there are several development applications we already know are coming. We have mostly a lot of commercial coming in. The 10700 commercial pads are being developed. Highland Mains has a large office that's proposing to come in. There's a church and another flex office space on Highland Boulevard in the PO zone. So they're not ready to be presented, but people are still building in Highland. So those are kind of staff's projects. With the general plan, there's a lot of goals. Some of them were kind of soft goals. Some of them were harder goals, meaning we had timelines specific with moderate income housing. We have detached ADUs. And senior housing zone, or kind of the 2 goals for moderate income housing to look at this year. And then we have other general goals. So with that, you've seen staff's goals. What would you like to get done this year? And I know we have a detached ADU kind of quasi-draft. How do we finish that up, get it done? What would you like to do here?
Thanks, Rob. So the object of the exercise now is just for us. And if we're not prepared to, this is a living thing, but can you individually think of things that we can do as a planning commission to proactively say, I have a bee in my bonnet about a specific thing, and that we can work on it as a planning commission? Kind of like we did a couple of years ago with the ADUs, where we've built the straw version of it. So what things are on your mind that you would like to have us take a look at?
And what would be helpful, because more people have joined the Planning Commission, is if we had some kind of document to pull up what our straw format was, so that the rest of everyone could see what we'd come up with, so that we could then build on that.
Yeah, so for ADUs, we actually do have that, and we can actually waltz through that briefly tonight, just so that everybody knows what we at least have. Spaghetti on the wall. Are there any other topics? So I can just give you an example of a pet project that I would like to see, and that is just trail signs or paint or marking or just something Because we have these beautiful trail maps, but if you go wandering around in a neighborhood, you have no clue if there's a trail or not. And by virtue of how our trails are constructed, some of them, when you get on them, you know you're on a trail, but then others, they veer off into a street for a couple of 100 meters, and then they veer back onto a hidden trail. And so what I would like to do personally is to see if we can figure out a way to access external resources to help us with signs or paint or something, so that if there's a little kid wandering around on a bicycle, if they follow the yellow brick road, they know that they're on the yellow brick road.
Well, the
type
kids
of
know
thing.
where they're going. It's visitors. They're getting lost.
Speaking of signage, I know this is different than what you're talking about, but I had mentioned this a couple years ago when my husband he's a pretty seasoned biker, and he was heading up to Suncrest, but he took the trail that day, and it had started to rain, and this, I don't know if it was the county or the city had just put that asphalt topping on top of the trail to preserve it a little bit. Anyways, it was very slippery that day, coming down that right angle turn by, let's see, what area is that? It's kind of where, it's kind of near where Kim Rodella lives, that little, by the baseball field that's in there, where the trail goes there and then makes the right angle turn. Anyways, he slid out on that and lost one of his teeth, and I had reached out to I reached out to city council and also Andy when he was here, and told him about that, and he said he was working on it. And I said, if they could just put something at the top of the hill just saying, slippery when wet, it's a right angle turn, just something just to alert people. And interestingly enough, we had somebody coming from Gunther's to my husband's office to do some work there, and he didn't show up. And I thought, well, that's really weird. They're usually very prompt, and you can count on them. And I called him, and he had a bike wreck on Murdoch Canal, not on that turn, but another right angle turn, broke his collarbone and some ribs, and he's a seasoned biker. So I just thought, you know what, maybe we could look into this and see if maybe there's some signage we can put there just to kind of, I don't know, just let people know that there's something that possibly could cause them harm. Just a thought.
So, Sherry, if I could expand on that, if we could put that in the category of trail maintenance, safety, signage, kind of the broader issue of just make sure our trails are brilliant in all respects. Would that be acceptable?
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
I do have one little project. We're talking about senior housing a little bit, and I would like to see if we can put senior housing into all the way into assisted living with perhaps memory care, 2-story sort of facility in Highland. It is maxed out. I'm in that phase of life of trying to find care for that age group for several extended family members, and the competition is high. It's like just trying to get in. So it's either you go all the way to Provo or Orem or into Salt Lake County to find location for family members. So I've reached out to Covington and let them know there's only a few spots left to build in Highland if you would like to make a pitch. But we've got the Longhorn property and perhaps anything over by Lone Peak. They are only 2-story. They limit how many. There's very limited parking because hardly any of them drive. And they have one little bus that takes them on tours. So it is a really great thing with a memory care option side. And it is something that is really needed in this area to service Alpine Highland and part of Lehigh, honestly, for residents, for their family members. I just want to keep that open.
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. So my understanding of the way that we've designed the general plan is that we do have accommodations for that. Mm-hmm. We probably just need to tweak maybe some language in different zones to make sure that they're consistent across the place, and that should a developer come and be interested in doing it, our code makes it attractive for them.
Yes. Yes,
So
I would
my
really like to see
high-level
something like
thoughts on that. because senior housing is one of our moderate income housing goals, we have a zone called the Senior Care Assisted Living Overlay Zone. It was written specifically for one facility out on North County. And my preference would be to take that and make it a little bit more broad, general, so it could be so just to explain, a zone is the base zoning, all the regulations. An overlay can apply on top of it that says, you can either do what the base says or this additional thing. So we could write that to allow in certain areas that the Planning Commission and Council choose these types of facilities. And I was also thinking maybe we wrap into that overlay the senior housing kind of density component where we say, you still all have the power of choosing where that goes, but we just overlay it on top of R140, say you either do R140 or you can do this if you meet all of these criteria in it. Kind of like how we used to do open space, but it's slightly different. So I was thinking maybe doing something along those lines to make it, we can do something with that.
And I want to just put this out there. The reason why also is if you go into Orem and Provo, the price for the exact same facility and services is cheaper. But the one facility that's out this way can charge $1,000 or what more because there's no competition. And they have this huge lineup. So it's just so saturated because everyone doesn't want to drive more than an hour or be that far away if there's an emergency. So it is something that would be really helpful.
That's great.
Is there any interest, in addition to the kind of the commercial level facilities, there is a provision for residential facilities, what some kind of negatively refer to as group homes, but it's for the elderly, where you can allow, more than a normal 4 people to live in it, but it's in a home style facility rather than a full assisted living commercial style. We have some rules about that. They're pretty restrictive in the city. Is that something you think should be addressed as part of this, or just kind of leave that as it is?
Can you give an example of what that would be?
It's like a beehive home.
Oh.
Yeah, we used to have one on 9600.
Yes.
There was one down there that had they could have up to 8 people plus a couple of staff to help. It's so they can still live in a home style without it being kind of this larger complex type thing. But not everyone chooses to use that. I don't think we have any currently operating in Highland at this point.
Well, my thought on it would be, as picking this as a topic, that we would all submit our thoughts separately and that we would have a series of discussions like this and then, debate, discuss residential, commercial only, however we fancy, pick ideas from different people, and then do that a few times iteratively, and then come up with a proposal that we all like, and then put it through a formal process, and then send that off to City Council.
Okay.
That type of thing. So I think part of that discussion process that we should entertain all sorts of ideas, even if initially we might go, I don't like that. I think we should at least be open to lots of different ideas to make sure that what we present to council is actually comprehensive. Deborah, you had something?
Oh, yes. I was just going to say, there's a place in Alpine that I don't even know if anybody knows is there. With the little houses right there. And that's just a kind of another thing, because we've got the one in Highland that looks very different than that type of setup. But that's also a really nice setup. You wouldn't even know going by that it's a senior home. But it has the small house, and it could be bigger for the people who need that assisted living, but then it has all the other small, little cottages around it.
I play pickleball with one of the ladies there.
Yeah.
She can still drive, has her own car and a garage. She's
But
85.
And it's wonderful because,
Kind of awesome.
but that's just another, if you're looking around and thinking of ideas, that's one place to check out too, because it's a regular, it's great.
And I'm just proposing that one of the things that we do need in this area is a memory care option.
Yes, yeah. Most of them have that, but yeah.
Can I
That's
state something? Just seems like last year we were into legacy housing, ADU from here, but council was not on board. So we did a bunch of work. It went to council. Council's like, we're not dealing with, or we don't want to deal with that now. And I understand why, because we could use it later. But it seems like we should have what we want to do, but as a commission, we are to help the council come to decisions, dig down into the deep, have the big public meetings. So if we come up with this list, which I think is a good list, I think it should go to council first.
Yes.
and then have council say, look, don't waste your time on these because that's not really the direction we're going.
Agreed.
But will you add these to your list? And then this is the order we'd like to do it maybe. And then that way we're working more together towards, I just feel like we got a little
Agreed.
off balance last year when we worked on something and they didn't want us to do that. And we're not elected officials. We're here to help the elected officials come up with what they want to do and grind into it and find out and give them all the info. And sometimes I like it when our info is not the same because then they have both sides of something. And then council can kind of direct. And I think council this year is going to go with the ADU thing. But it just seems like there was a little disconnect. I guess one of my things, I'd like to see more connection between the commission and council. Quarterly maybe where because you guys remember we had that meeting with council and we all were in here and it just seemed very productive because I got a feel of what each of the council members were looking at. Because I knew what Kurt wanted, I knew what Brittany wanted because I knew them. But some of the newer ones I didn't know. And I haven't had a meeting with them to really, I mean, other than when we did the general plan, I got to know some of the new ones and where their focus was. Because I'm not trying to put forward, or I don't think we're trying to put forward an agenda because we're appointed versus council who's elected. So I love that because I like everything you just said with memory and ADUs and signage. Like I'd like to see a QR code so whenever you click on it, it shows you that map, shows you where you're at on that map, you know. But do they care, you know, is that a focus they want to look at, you know, on the map thing? So maybe we get a little input from, you know, I think we put our list together, you know, stuff that we're interested in, which we've just talked about. But I'd like to hear council like, well, those are all great, or I didn't even think of that one. You know, maybe they're not thinking trails and now they will be thinking trails. But just so we're going forward on the same list of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jerry. And actually, what I omitted to mention is that's really the intent of this. So that before we go and pour cement on a whole bunch of things, that we have some sort of iterative dialogue with mayor and city council and city staff. Because, you know, council and planning commission may all be on the same wavelength, and city staff might be going, hello, like, no, that's unfunded. How can we do that? Type of thing. So, great point. What other topics would you guys like to
I
bring up,
have a
Sherry?
couple. So first off, I think I've mentioned our fencing standards. So a lot of the fences look great. They look like the stamped concrete. But then on further inspection, we've found that some of them are not. They're fiberglass. And yeah, or plastic, and they fall apart. And so we had mentioned like on main thoroughfares or where developers, you know, put in the fencing on a main road, that we maybe have a little bit, I guess, stricter requirements on that it be actual stamped concrete so it holds up, doesn't get torn up by the wind or other things.
Did we approve a standard? I thought where that wooden fence, where the wooden columns were down the main road, whenever that was falling over, they were required to put the new fence.
Yes.
Yes, so the Alpine Highway was
Yeah.
a big point. The city actually still has an ongoing program. We just haven't had anyone apply for it this year, where we'll provide roughly half the cost for them to replace the fence with a concrete fence.
Have they been notified that that exists?
Yes, repeatedly.
All right.
And actually, just for all the commissioners, if you drive down there, you'll see that there's several hundred feet worth of, it looks like a patchwork quilt that has been replaced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying. From
Yes.
Sherry's point, we have approved a general theme, but it's just time. Like when it comes down, the new one has to go up. They can't put what was there up.
They can basically maintain what they have, or they can move it to the new standard. They can't do something else with those.
Okay.
Just be a little more specific, because people are putting up the ones that look like stamped concrete, but they're actually the fiberglass, plastic, whatever. On Canal Boulevard's an example, that new development there, and then also on 10400, you've seen that when it's gotten damaged, you can see the fiberglass. So that was one of them, and then another one that I've mentioned to a few people are the electric lines, or I think they're the electrical poles that are up. Many cities in Utah require developers to bury those when they come in to do a project. We had to do that when my husband did his building in West Jordan City. And it's just a good idea. I know the council was talking about wildfire issues and things like that, saying that we were in a wildfire zone.
And our winds.
And yes, our high winds. And so I just think it's a good idea that when developers do come in, that we ask them to bury those lines. I know it's kind of been a patchwork up until now because there's some areas where they weren't required to do it and then other areas where they were. So you have things that aren't super consistent. So I just want to make sure that we're really consistent on that.
Jay and Rob, I thought that all of our subdivisions mandate buried power.
They do. So everything new that gets put in has to be undergrounded.
Yeah. And
I don't know that we have the ability to tell developers to tell Rocky Mountain to bury their lines. Rocky Mountain will do it if someone else will pay for it.
I'm talking about like there's a development I believe on 10400 that it's not that old. And their lines are still up and they connect with the park and then down by Mountain Ridge and then down by the church. All those lines are still up and that church isn't that old. I think it was finished like 14 years ago and they weren't required to bury the lines.
Well, yeah, I think what we're saying is where there were existing power lines, it's hard for us to require developers to underground them because Rocky Mountain Power doesn't want their lines to be above ground, drop down for 2 lots, and then go back up. It's harder for them to maintain. They want them all up or down. And so they don't want the patchwork. So everything new, they still might have to connect into those power lines, but ultimately we don't have control over those power lines. Rocky Mountain will underground them, but they require us to pay for them.
So if they're new lines, the developer.
All the new
puts
lines
in,
are underground.
But they're there.
Oh, if they're existing. Okay.
It's existing, like down by the Longhorn property.
Yes.
Right there. Those are already up.
Okay.
The new lines would go down, but then they would connect up.
That's really interesting because in West Jordan, they make you do it. There were already existing power lines and they made us bury those. It cost probably back when we did that maybe 6 years ago, it was over $10,000 to have that done and we had to do it. And they were already existing.
We can look into
So-
that.
I mean, I've had to do it just different municipalities,
That's
but
it.
I do think you have to have the buy-in of Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, my understanding is Rocky Mountain's always been resistant to us, but I haven't talked with them directly. So we can definitely explore that and see what options we have.
okay, does anybody have any other things they want to just throw against the wall?
Yeah, I have a couple things. Revisiting the road improvement plan, I know that it is very out of date. I know that there are roads and neighborhoods that have either been skipped over or are kind of in this limbo. The plan itself is really, really hard to find on the city's website. I talked to so many people during the election that have little stretches of road in their neighborhood that are completely torn up. And so I'm going on to see if they'd been skipped, if they were still in the pipeline, and some of them had been skipped. And so I have like a spreadsheet with pictures and everything. But it seems to be that it's even hard to find an updated plan on the website so people can just know where they are in the process, this ongoing process. I don't know if that requires like a new audit or if we just kind of petition residents for feedback like, hey, was your neighborhood taken care of, or do you know of any roads that, I mean, a couple of these roads I went out and visited are gnarly. And like a block up, it had been all done, and a block that way, it had been all done, and it just kind of skipped some of these areas. So I think that'd be something good to tighten up that whole plan that the city has. And then the city's contracted with someone, right, to do some kind of sidewalk audit. Are they using like LiDAR or something? I can't remember the technology that they're using, but that's a thing, right? That's going to happen.
Yes, it's more public works, so I'm not involved in it. I know we're coming up with a similar, we had a road maintenance and replacement plan. They're doing that for sidewalks now. but I'm not sure where they are in that process.
I wonder if there's a way, and if this, involves the traffic toolbox at all, to include like bike lanes, specifically around schools. I got a couple emails from kids who I'm sure their parents had them write these emails in to me while I was campaigning about just like not being able to ride their bikes to school just because they aren't comfortable taking the routes that actually allows them. And some of the sidewalks that are in, they've almost been hit from blind driveways and stuff, and so they would like to be able to ride in a bike lane. Yeah, I'm always ringing the active transportation bell whenever I can. I like to get it in there. And then I think the only other thing I was thinking of is I know that we have kept in mind development of the Longhorn Field in moving forward, like with the general plan and with a lot of things that we're addressing this year. Is there anything that we should be out in front of with the Utah State Development Center land that is probably going to be developed? I don't know the answer to that. It had dawned on me if that's something that we needed to get out ahead of.
So I know Scott's on that board of the development center, and so he's been really good at communicating back what theoretically is on deck, but we'll just have to see how that unfolds. There isn't really a hard deadline with it's going to happen in 3 months or 6 months or a year.
One of the tweaks the council actually made to the general plan before adopting it was that whole corridor thing that you all implemented. Scott added to it and said the development center had literally like the week before adopted its own master plan and said, and our plan kind of meshed with it actually really well. He just wanted to make sure that was cross-referenced. So we were incorporating their thoughts and planning for it in the city. So, but there was no they're doing this in 5 years or 2 years or anything like that.
Yeah, cool, thank you. Anything else from our esteemed physician colleague?
No, I mean, you mentioned the ones that I would be interested in. The ADU thing I'm, reasonably passionate about. The senior thing is of interest to me since I'm not far off from that, so there you go. So yeah, I think those are the ones that I'm most interested in, so I'm supportive of what's been said.
Okay, there's no obligation to have a mandatory, this is my pet project. Deborah, do you have anything tonight at least?
Well, how much time do we have? No, I actually agree with a lot of what's been said, which I'm really glad that I'm really on board. And I think Audrey and I are going through a lot of the same stuff right now with the senior living thing. So, I think besides my downlighting, which did say we were supposed to put it into the general plan as aspirational, and I haven't noticed if it's in there, at least according to our notes.
Forgive me, Deborah, I didn't hear.
Downlighting, it's, like anything that's built is just, so that we can maybe someday see the sky again, the stars and such, especially with those mountains and over the, anyway, that's a soapbox. But I think also that placemaking, and I had commented on that on the original stuff. I've talked about this a lot, but we need the thing that's good about the placemaking and how we do things, the same way here, the entrances to Highland, the same signs or whatever, is just so that people know we're a little town and we're one town and we're cute or attractive in some way. I mean, we've got the most, I say this all the time, it's the same thing, gorgeous mountains around us. I mean, this is phenomenal. People, and we keep doing this stuff that is just, I don't know. That's why I love the fact that we're putting a lot more into print about certain things that we want to see done and the city wants to see done and all that, because that'll help get a little more cohesive on stuff. But I think a lot of it is just the cohesiveness of the town, pulling that side of the street. I'm still trying to figure out the prettiest crosswalk or tunnel that we can go through from this side of the highway there to the other side, but things like that, and that's the only big one really, would be crossing that main road. The other stuff's just small little things that we can do all around the town that pull us together. But that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, Deborah. Thank you.
I had 2 more things, Robert. and commission. In the ADU discussion, I think it'll be important to remember, if it's not already definitely in there, to talk about flag lots and just what we're going to do as far as flag lots go. And then I didn't know if this was appropriate or not, but with the Highland Mains being finished this year, I think the one place the city has lacked is in supporting local businesses and kind of creating relationships and partnerships, and maybe just looking into some kind of public-private partnership with the Highland Mains. I know that there are a couple of places in there that can be, placemaking kind of areas for the city. And I know that it would only benefit Highland Mains. And it would be nice to have kind of something on that side of the highway, on the north side, for residents on that side to come. And there seems to be some kind of barrier. Tippina's Highway, it's this perceived barrier that separates, the city. And it's just, it's impossible to get, like what Deborah was talking about, impossible to cross. But even just driving, it's I don't know. So I think something on that side would be nice. And again, that might not be quite the mandate that we're talking about, but something on my mind.
Well, thanks, Wes. That's exactly like you're quoting the general plan, because it talks about that specifically. Is it all right with everybody if we just spend 5 minutes zooming through what we did 2 years ago or 3 years ago on ADUs, just to refresh everybody's memory? Yes? No? Okay, yeah, right now. And review this on your own time as well. And this is nothing, we're not making any decisions. This is really just a reminder of what we had at least put together. And the feedback from City Council and the Mayor wasn't, no, we hate this, go away. It was just a timing thing to try and massage, state mandates. Okay, so there's a little preamble to the Constitution here, but at least the way that we had it written was, we've got a lot of people that have lived a long time in the community here. There's pretty strong social and common religious fabrics, and we're a pretty heterogeneous city. And the sad thing is, as those folks either have financial challenges or health challenges, where they become at their most vulnerable, it seems like that's when they have to move. And then they move into these communities where they don't know anybody, and that just seems like we could do better. Mm-hmm. And so one of the thoughts or suggestions that was motivating this, not the state mandate, create high density, it was really just trying to figure out a way, how do we take someone that has lived in the community, everybody loves them, they've been there, no, we don't do we do Girl Scouts? Whatever the things are, both ladies and men, people love each other, and our community is a great community, and we felt like we should do something to allow people the option, should they choose to stay here. One of those options is to sell their home, stay in exactly the same neighborhood, same religious congregation, same everything, but you just live in a smaller place. So if you could just scroll through that. So here's the high-level summary. So existing code applies. Currently, we've got this goofy breezeway where basically you're remodeling the home, but you're pretending that it's a separate structure, and you've got this funny little walkway where the roof has to be connected, and it's all contrived.
And messes up parking.
Yeah, it's just an odd situation. So the proposal was, get rid of the funny breezeway thing, and if people want to double the size of their home or triple it or whatever they want to do, they just come into the city, file a building application, and they enlarge their existing home. Then separately, ADUs are completely detached, separate things. And one of those building units, whether it's the main house or the separate ADU, has to be inhabited by the owner of the property, with no exceptions.
Yep.
And then we had just, and this is all contrived, but with some reasoning behind it, that these are small. We're not intending someone to build a little cottage of 10,000 square feet in the back of their home. So, and we don't know if this is right or not, but whether it's 750 square feet or 1,000 square feet, but the spirit behind it was, you're not going to go build the Taj Mahal in the back of your home. Yeah, this is not a two-house thing. And so, yeah, West to address that, at least back when this was proposed, and my feeling is I'm not a fan of the flag lot concept. The ADU size becomes part of the existing code where they talk about percentage of lot sizes. R140 zone only, so that you don't have someone in a R1, because we've got some of these non-conforming R120s or R130s. ADUs must have at least one kitchen and one ablution facility. Number G, it can be allowed as part of a larger structure. So, can I pick on you, Jerry? Jerry's got a beautiful garage for his vehicles. You can put an ADU inside your barn dominium, but the ADU can't be, if you've got a 10,000 square foot horse barn, you can't have a 10,000 square foot ADU. You can have a 750, in this example at least, a 750 square foot dwelling inside the 10,000 square foot horse barn. Limit one ADU per lot, and that there's some kind of parking accommodation that is dedicated for the ADU so we don't clutter up the streets as a result. From city engineering, they are tied into existing utilities, so there's no separate meter for water and lights, sewer, etc. And then all city codes apply. And
that all city codes apply, is that has to do with like safety vehicles being able to have access to that?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, and then also just complementary architectural standards, etc., etc. So you don't have a big pink Barbie doll house and old Tudor ADU that's jarring to the community. A height limit, and there was a question that we didn't answer. It was really just part of this whole proposal. Should we submit a separate height and setback ordinance, or do we permit somebody to put an ADU? Because today, at least theoretically, the setback on the side is 15 feet. There's a 10-foot PUE that goes around the property. But like we see in the, as you exit down Alpine Highway, where we've got this unpleasant situation on Canal Boulevard, right on that northeast corner where someone's built a barn that is 35 feet high. It just is not terribly attractive.
So the one issue that I see with that is if we put a height limit and they have a barn dominium or garage situation and they put an ADU in it and it has stairs where the bedroom's up and the kitchen main's down, is that going to exceed the height limit?
Yeah, so Audrey, I don't know. I'm not saying what we should or shouldn't. I'm just giving a brief narrative of here's what we had thrown as spaghetti against the wall. And if you, which I hope we will want to discuss this further in the future, that come with your best ideas about how to address this. So height limits, setback limits, should we have a special setback limit for ADU versus just normal, barns or things? And then in the ADU, should we have something where we mandate different from our current building code, but where we say you have to have ADA accessible doors or toilets or showers or things, which we can or cannot put in there. So that's just the high level review of what we had gone through for those of you that weren't here when we did this. We don't need to discuss it at all. It's in the packet. And
where does everyone access this?
okay, so in the packet for this evening, if you go to the agenda and you download the agenda packet, it's on page 30 some change.
Starting around 30-ish.
Yeah.
I do have a thing that's just kind of drives me crazy, it's the ADU thing. It's not a living thing, but I'm seeing more and more. I think most of them are sport courts. Some of them are sheds that are 100 feet tall and all corrugated. I'm not doing any exaggeration here, no, but they're like really tall, like 2-story easily, but a tall, and just all this corrugated, and it looks like a factory. And I'm seeing more and more of them being built in people's yards that are as close to the fence as they put. I think I brought it up, but some of you were here last year when I saw one, and it's kind of in my neighborhood, that this older couple had a single-story house. They went away on a mission. They came home from their mission, and their neighbor had built a 2-story court right as close to the property line as they could, blocked completely not only their view at all. They look out their bedroom window or their side windows, and they could see nothing but these walls, and because they had a single story, and no sunshine even could get into those rooms. But this thing was so close, and it looks to me, every time I go by it, I go crazy, and I'm seeing more of them being built all around. And they're just, I don't know, I feel like I'm starting to live in if you had, some acreage, but they look like, I don't know what, industrial buildings to me, this corrugated metal, modern thing that everybody's loving for the next couple of years, and then it will be totally driving people crazy. But stuff, I don't know, I think we need to pay attention to some of or I don't know, maybe change, like you said, these setbacks and where they put them. And as a matter of fact, this thing is as far away from this person's house as they could possibly put it. And as close to that other house, way closer to that other house than to their own. And I think things like that, we've got to be, I don't know what we can do, but we need to have something.
I think the ones that are the biggest eyesores are the ones that are corner lots, where because
Yeah,
they're corner
and that one is a
lots,
car lot
they
now.
are at the front of the lot because it's on the side. So
I think
And
we're
it's
talking two
trucks
different
and cars out
things.
front.
The ADU, I think we discussed, would have similar architecture, match the house, I think what you're talking about, because I've built one of these, but mine's more of a barn, but it's the ADU where you can take a certain percentage of your lot coverage and build as big as building as you want it, as long as you don't exceed that lot coverage. So if you have 2 acres, you can build a pretty mine's 40 by 40. I put rustic barn stuff on it and stuff, but it could have just been a,
I think they
square.
might have an
But those
acre.
are,
They don't have
that
two.
are the most offensive because they face the street or they're touching a neighbor's
yeah.
property.
But so there's ADU, which we're going to control architecture.
Yeah.
And then there's
This is
what
the-
you're
this
talking
isn't
about
a
are the
dwelling
auxiliary
unit.
buildings.
Yeah, this is a shed, or,
Yeah, that don't have to match. That's also like HOAs. Bull River has an HOA, you can't do that.
Yeah,
Hold
so,
the
so
neighborhood most-
commissioners, how would you feel if we just put Deborah's comments in a broad category of, I don't know, aesthetic, like,
Well, no, she's
View.
specifically talking about, what's that called?
Yeah,
it's just your
Auxiliary-
setback.
both for accessory building
But
design
it's more of a
standards.
garage accessory
Yeah.
building versus an ADU, which is a
Yeah,
livable.
understood. Unrelated to ADUs, just
Yeah.
this broad
Yeah,
category of,
this is a shop.
yeah, it's
The
something
ADU
that,
ADU.
reminded me of
that sort of
this,
messes
that,
your visibility, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that I didn't see on here that I thought we talked about was, right now in the city, you can create a basement apartment, and there's no limit on the square footage of that because it's part of the building. But I think one of the things we said is if you do a detached ADU, you can't also have an basement apartment and a house. It's one or the other. Either have the basement apartment or you have the ADU. You can't have 3 dwelling units
Yeah, actually, that's a great point.
Yeah, we had all agreed on that.
Jerry,
I just didn't see it on
Rob,
here.
would you please make a note of that? That's a great point, Jerry.
And
So you're saying
parking
you
would
can't have a
become an
basement
issue.
in your
So right, yeah, so if you have a basement apartment and you want to build an ADU, you have to get rid of the basement apartment, meaning just open it up to the house. You can't rent it out.
Okay, that's
You
great.
can't rent the house, the basement, and live in the ADU.
So what about if the ADU has a basement, you're saying you cannot have two separate
Well, the
people in the
ADU
ADU
is not necessarily going to, it has to be limited. I think
to one?
750 is low, but 1,000. If you guys come to my house, my ADU, which is totally detached house, is 1,000 square feet, and you get a feel of what a kitchen, there's a little kitchen, there's a bedroom and a family room, and it barely fits in 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go really beyond that. I know we had talked about 1,600, but that starts to feel more like a house. You can buy a 1,600 square foot house. But 1,000, I think, really makes it a livable, for like if we got older and we wanted to stay in our spot, we would need about 1,000.
Okay, so then I have a question for you, because there are plenty of these, acre properties and whatnot, where you've got the older couple that live in the home, they now have adult children, all of you have had your kids move back in for a little bit, you don't want them all over in the same, you've got the kitchen in the basement, they're now kind of living in the basement. You build this ADU, mom and dad now leave the main house. They want to live on a main floor. They want their own space. But they have their kids, so no one's renting. Like,
That's fine. You could,
it's
it's all connected, so you're
That's what
fine.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? Like you
But
can.
you can't
You
can
can't
move
charge
into that
rent.
house and rent the house, the whole
Right.
house. But if your kids are living there, they're living with you. They're
Right.
They're related.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, because that's
No, you're-
happening
you're fine to do that.
everywhere.
And that's actually what you would want to do. You'd want
Right.
your kids to live in the house. You live in the get.
Right.
You see the grandkids.
You have someone there that's close that
Yeah,
can
they
give
mow
you the
the
care you
lawn,
need,
they
and
clean
I'm
the
like, because we don't
trees.
want to undo the good that we're just saying we want to do.
Right. No, you're
Okay.
allowed to do that.
Yeah, I'll give an example. In our neighborhood, we have a home that has 2 renters in the basement. And so that's just a compliance problem. It's not necessarily a...
renters as in a couple, or?
No, so you've got the home, the family itself, and then they have designed their basement and then just locked the doors in a way, and they somehow snuck it through building inspection where they've got separate entrances, and they're renting them out. So there are 3 separate families living in that same,
Yeah, you're not
and that's really not the intent of what we want. We want to encourage, minimum 2 separate families, or if it's the same family, granny and grandpa or something in the ADU. Thank you. Is there anything else that anybody wants to chat about, or?
Well, I know that's not the intent today, but I was just going to double up on Jerry. The 750, I think, is a little small, so if we go down the road on this, I think you might want to look at that, but that can be done later.
Yeah. And could I ask you a favor, just as the Planning Commission? Read through what is there and please chime in. So if you don't like the 750, put in, 1100 or whatever in the same way that we're going to add that note about you can't have 3 different, we're not talking 3 separate entrances here. So please speak up.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Sherry, would you like to sing for us? Oh, okay.
Just by way of communication items, we have future meetings. We will have potentially some new planning commissioners, or maybe the same, depending on the terms for alternates expire every year. And Trent, your term does expire, so chat with Brittany. Or Tracy, sorry. Trent's not here. I'm sorry. I flipped in my head. And then we'll also be picking a new chair and vice chair, or the same one if you want, up to you. But we do that every year. So February is kind of the new things for Planning Commission. And then by way of legislative update, we have, it's the legislative session. There's a lot of bills pending. I will try to keep you apprised of ones that deal specifically with land use. Often though, I feel like most of January and February they kind of have a lot of things and a lot of them end up dying or changing. And then in the last 2 or 3 weeks, everything gets approved. So there's usually a huge push at the very end of the session. So you might get a lot of news reports and articles about bills who knows what will happen with them. I know there's been the big push I've heard this year is about water. So far, we haven't seen anything too scary for Highland coming in that would impact us.
Except for that.
What about
Yeah.
the HB 60 that I was mentioning?
So that changed some standards. It's proposed to change some standards that the state engineer uses to approve change applications for water rights. And
It was saying that it limits what people can, or who can come forward and say, you know,
who can protest a
yes.
change application?
And
yes.
actually was in another article in the paper about the Great Salt Lake, because there had been a magnesium mining place that wanted water rights, and then you have Mike Schultz who wanted water rights, and he got them, Mike did, but the magnesium company didn't. So now they're suing the state. And anyway, it's kind of a big mess, and the people that are trying to look after the water, different entities, are saying that that bill will prevent them from being able to come in and say, look, this is not good because of this. And so I thought that was interesting too. So I think we need to look at that bill.
Sure. I don't think it would really affect Highland too much. We don't have a lot in the way of groundwater anymore. Most of them are either owned by the city. They were owned by the Highland Water District several years ago that the city acquired. But there may be some impacts. A lot of it is, I think they're trying to make it, they say they're trying to make it so more water hits the Great Salt Lake by limiting what the state engineer looks at in terms of approving changes of water rights. But I don't know if that actually will be the result of it. The language is a little confusing. But again, there's a lot of bills we're going to be watching. So I would also recommend you all get onto the League of Cities and Towns. They have a daily update email that they send out, and they'll sometimes send out action alerts saying, this is a big bill, we strongly oppose it, please contact people on it. And on those, you'll get the email. That's when we'll say, really start pushing to,
Okay.
But generally, there's still a lot of discussion going on. So there's some things out there that we're a little worried about, but they always go through a lot of amendments and changes before they get adopted or they get pushed through in the last week.
I just want to mention there was another bill, and I don't think I sent it to our group, but I was talking to some people about it, and I can look it up to see which one it was. But it was one where they were proposing that the different water users have to disclose how much water they're using. And then it came out that they were going to limit what the public could find out about that. And then I think they changed that. And then they changed the square footage of the type of building that would even be part of that, which they were saying, no, this is only going to be limited to smaller buildings, which then it makes it kind of a useless bill. You know what I mean? If it's not even telling us what the big users are using. I thought that was interesting as well. So.
Yeah.
Use all the big places don't want you to know.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the water one.
Right, thank you very much. Are we going to, okay. Would someone like to make a motion? Are we going to do the closed session afterwards?
Yes, so if someone could use that motion word for word.
Yes, okay. I move that the Planning Commission recess the regular Planning Commission meeting to convene in a closed meeting in the Executive Conference Room to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation as provided by UC annotated 52-4-205. We need to second that?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Deborah, and then roll call?
Yep.
Yes.
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 Yes.